here's what Jesus is trying to do. He is trying to teach you the way to have a pure and clean heart, pure motivation that comes from God. John, in his first epistle, he sums up the entire message of Jesus in a single sentence, all right? And this is everything that Jesus came preaching and teaching. He says in 1 John 1:6, God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. This is the message that Jesus came preaching. God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. So when we come into relationship with God, we are attempting to put away the darkness within our soul, the place that nobody sees. The darkness first comes from there. Jesus says you don't clean the outside of the cup first, then the inside is still filthy. You have to clean the inside first, then the outside naturally gets clean because you had to dip it in the water, the whole thing, right? We do not want to be guilty of looking good on the outside. As Jesus said of the Pharisees, you are whitewashed sepulchres. Your tombs, built like monuments, beautiful, but on the inside full of every detestable and unclean thing, right? Zombies. Oh, I shouldn't have said that in church. Sorry. On the inside, it's gross. And you know where you're at that way, right? You know how clean, pure, innocent are the motivations of the heart. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Psalm 119:11. We want the inside to be pure. But how do you get that? Maybe you've come in today and there's darkness there. Worse yet, maybe you're here today and you're like, if I was being perfectly honest with you, Richie, I kind of like the darkness. It's appealing to me, right? It is appealing, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be tempted toward it. There's something about the pleasure and the allure of dark things. And they don't seem so dark when we get started in them, right? It seems perfectly fine and innocent, no big deal. No big deal. And then you find your life beginning to spiral. You become a slave to the darkness. Instead of you ruling and choosing to do darkness, darkness now is commanding your obedience through our ingrained habits. And then we're stuck. Then we say, well, I'm just the kind of person who's a bad person. I'm just the kind of person who is this way. And there's nothing I can do about it. That's not true. Like, you can change. You can become a different kind of person. You can become the best kind of person you can be, right? Jesus is the guide. That's what he's come to do. Be your personal life coach, right? And you're not going to find a better life coach than him. I promise you, you're not going to find someone who understands life better than Jesus. Someone who understands making a difference better than Jesus. Someone who understands a life of significance better than Jesus. First, what he's going to do is he's going to teach us the ways to clean the inside of the soul. We've gone through chapter 5. I'm not going to cover it again today. It's so tempting. It's so good. Like, when you meditate on God's word, it just gets better and better and better. So, Jesus says, what would it profit you if you gained everything this world has to offer, and yet you lose your soul? And he's not just talking about going to hell when you die, which is a very real reality. He's talking about your life being so broken you can't enjoy anything, right? You're a slave to sin and darkness. You're a slave to your brokenness. You're a slave to anger. You're a slave to bitterness. You're a slave to anxiety, to laziness. whatever it is, you're a slave to it. What would it profit you to gain the whole world and yet lose your soul, forfeit your soul? And so this is him in all of the genius of our Creator God saying, start with your soul, renovate that, and then life pours out beautifully. And the Sermon on the Mount is probably his greatest teaching on how to clean the soul. Right? So in chapter 6, we get into religious practice. Right? Religion is fine. It is like going to the weight gym. You exercise, you build muscles. But the point of having strong muscles is to do work. Right? It's not just to look pretty on the beach. Right? Muscles are so that you can enjoy strength in life, power in life, to do things that you would want to do. Right? Muscles for vanity's sake is probably not that healthy, although much desirable, right, for us. Everyone wants to feel like they look good, and you do look good, by the way. Everyone came here looking good. You do, all right? I'm impressed. Okay, religious practice. He starts first with giving to the poor, okay? Giving your alms, okay? And practice your righteous deeds in front of others. Notice here, do not practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. And then verse 2 of chapter 6 of Matthew. So when you give to the needy. So these are synonymous terms. What Jesus is talking about, practice your righteousness in front of others, is giving to the needy. All right. However, obviously, practices of righteousness can be much bigger than that as well. Right? You don't want to do that to make a show of it. When you're always doing good things to make a show of it and to get a pat on your back and to say, man, you're amazing, you're so generous, you're this, you're that. You're robbing your soul of purity. Now you're doing things for what you can get from people. You're doing good things for people to get from others. As opposed to doing good things just because it's your character or your nature to do good things and to take care of people, to be loving and compassionate, right? So when you give, do not let your left hand know what the right hand is doing. The only way to do that is how some of you drove to church this morning, right? Autopilot. You become so generous that it's just natural for you to give to people, right? It's your natural automatic response to be generous, to be giving, to be kind. Now, that doesn't mean that you be mindless, all right? There are a lot of people who want your money to do nefarious things. Do not give them money. That's not loving or kind, right? It's not in the nature of God to do that. So you have to have your wits about you. The second thing he does is prayer, right? When you're praying to be heard by others, look how holy and spiritual that guy is. His prayers are pretty good. And you begin to pray just so others will know how good and holy and awesome and amazing you are. You're robbing your soul of the growth that it needs. So Jesus says, go close the door, pray in secret so no one sees you. So you have an automatic response of giving. Now you have praying in secret so no eye is on you. It's just you and the Lord. And no one knows about it, right? As a parent, this is a little more challenging, right? Because me as a parent, what do I want my boys to see from their dad? I want them to see a dad who prays, a dad who reads his Bible, right? So I have to make time for both. A little bit of time where I'm completely by myself, and times where my family gets to see me as a dad, as the leader of the household, right? Leading the way. Now, Hannah tends to lead in that way better than me. So just pure confession, Hannah is extremely diligent about spending time with the Lord, like twice a day. She's amazing. Let's just marveling in the majesty of my wife. Yeah, I try to, like 50 times a day. That's the goal. Okay. When you fast, this is, to me, one of the most hilarious passages in the entire New Testament. Jesus is like talking smack to the Pharisees. He is. Like, there's no other way to really read this. It's like, when you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do. I'm so hungry. Like, can you imagine maybe Jesus even preached that way? Don't look somber as the hypocrites do. I'm fasting. My life sucks for Jesus. I mean, for God. My life sucks. It's just so horrible. They disfigure their faces. I can't even imagine. I mean, it's just so visual, right? They disfigure their faces to show others that they're fasting. You know, Jesus is talking trash. He is laying it down. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. Come on. Isn't that funny? Like, they've received, that's their reward. They've gotten their reward, looking so miserable to everybody else. When you fast, don't let anybody know. Clean yourself up. Look and act just as you would if you were eating. Right? So no one can even tell that you're fasting. Your attitude should be the same whether you're hungry or whether you're well fed. And nobody should be able to tell the difference. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by learning how to tap into a different power source, right? Now, people who make a habit of intermittent fasting, they have discovered that you can get a boost of energy from that, and you don't have to suffer through that as long as your body gets used to the idea of fasting. But in the meantime, we train ourselves to rely on God's power, His joy, His Holy Spirit to boost our attitude. And then we, how should I say this? We don't try harder. We train intentionally, right? You don't pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, but you train intentionally. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, I got to get boots on, right? I got to put some boots on. And how do I do that? Well, I don't feel very good this morning, right? Have a headache, didn't sleep enough. I don't really feel like worshiping God, but you know what? I'm going to praise Him anyways. I'm going to begin by thanking God. And I'm not feeling it, but I'm going to do it. Then I'm going to say, you know what? Even when I don't feel like it, He's still worthy of it. So I'm then training my mind intentionally when I feel bad today, how to improve my day by focusing in on Him, relying on Him, calling forth praises for Him. Then pretty soon, the body follows the spirit, right? My spirit then begins to be filled with the joy and the peace and the warmth and the hope and the energy that comes from God, and my body catches up, right? No matter where we are, what we're doing, you might be hopeless in despair today. You might be in a dark place in your life today. But if you begin to practice intentionally, train yourself intentionally in worshiping the Lord, in calling forth His praises and His plan for your life, you're identifying yourself with Him as opposed to with how you feel in the moment. And we all like to think that we're very rational people, but when push comes to shove and we're hangry, we're not very rational, all right? And when we're having a bad day, we're not very rational. And it's like, you know that you should not be acting that way. If you have any kind of emotional clarity or mental clarity in the moment, you know, why am I so angry about this? Have you ever thought that before? Why am I talking like this? I don't want to talk this way. But then we can't help ourselves. We just keep doing it. For the youth, why am I talking so disrespectful to my parents right now? I don't want to be talking this way. It's just coming out of my mouth. And I know that this isn't going to produce any kind of goodness there. Husbands and wives, you get angry or bitter. Why am I talking this? Why am I yelling at my spouse right now or arguing about something? It doesn't even matter. But then we just can't help it. We continue forward with it. The ability to learn how to pivot in those moments takes a tremendous amount of humility. The most amount of humility a human can experience to be in the midst of a failure, to admit, and then to pivot. Why am I depressed right now? Why am I angry? And then say, you know what? This is just wrong. I'm sorry. And then the Bible says we put to death those things. In Colossians 3, we put to death the deeds of the flesh, the attitudes of the flesh, of the sinful nature, and we clothe ourselves with the attitude of Christ, right? And when we clothe ourselves with that attitude, and it's like, man, I should not be angry about this. I'm sorry. That's a tip for you. If you confess in the moment, it gives you the greatest ability to pivot from a bad attitude, right? I'm sorry. I should not be talking this way to you, dear. And then that's not enough, because now I actually have to change my attitude. So then I make the decision. My will chooses joy, chooses to delight in, chooses to change the tone of my voice. And then I have to do that by passing certain thoughts through my mind. And these thoughts become readily available to us as we study the Bible and as we take time in prayer and fasting. We store up treasures in heaven, right? Take time in worship. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to bless you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. I've heard pastors say that only applies to Israel. Well, Romans says that you are the true Israel by faith. So boom, it applies, biblically speaking, prophetically speaking. And two, since when does God not have a plan for somebody's life? Even without the Bible passage, we can know from any other passage that God is going to have a plan for your life. You have a God-given destiny that He stamped upon you. He made you completely unique in all of creation with gifts and skills that He wants you to cultivate to become a certain kind of person that's going to make a difference in many people's lives. To overwhelm the darkness by the testimony and the witness of your life. That's who God has made you to be. He has a plan for your life. He wants to bring you there, but you can never get there if you're still a slave to the sinful nature. So Jesus says, when you fast, make it look like you're having a great day, right? And pretty soon you are having a great day. And pretty soon you don't even notice when you're fasting and not fasting till it's been days and days and days. And you're just having a good life. You're content. You've learned the secret of being content, not letting your body dictate your emotions, but letting your soul dictate your emotions, right? This is how we make some good progress with our character. When we do these things in secret, it makes us so much more likely in the moment to be able to humble ourselves before somebody and to say, man, I'm really off on this. I'm sorry. I need to pivot my behavior and my attitude and do something different right now. If we don't have the character in place to be humble, when those moments come, we will not be humble, right? Well, because we don't have the power available to us. We haven't cultivated it. We don't have the strength to be humble in the moment when we need it. And marriages fall apart, relationships burn. And then we're sitting there, it's like, I knew better. I knew better. This whole time I knew better, and I just couldn't stop myself. Well, Jesus says if you begin to do these things in secret, you will begin to have power to overcome the flesh, right? Romans chapter 8 says the one who gratifies the desires of the flesh, The one whose mind is set on fleshly things, worldly things, will gratify those desires for the worldly things. The one whose mind is set on spiritual things will not gratify the desires of the flesh, but the desires of the Holy Spirit. And so if you begin to learn how to set your mind upon the Spirit of God every single day, all throughout your day, what happens is you're no longer feeding the darkness. I heard this somewhere in the last 2 weeks. I thought it was great. So there are two wolves. Right? One is kept living in darkness and one is kept living in light. Which one do you think will live longer? The one you feed. Right? It's good. If you're feeding the darkness with your mind, thinking about things that are dark, just thinking about things that are dark. Nobody knows whether you're thinking dark things or whether you're thinking light things, things that are godly. Only you know that. If you feed the thoughts that are dark, that wolf gets stronger. If you feed the thoughts with what is godly, the lion of the tribe of Judah will eat the other wolf. So I'm a visual person. Hey, Jesus eating a wolf, right? He's the good shepherd. If you allow him his proper place in your life, he will beat the wolves to death. He's not scared to do so. He does it all throughout the Gospels. People come to him demonized. And the demons are shaking, so they're so scared to have to stand before Jesus. Like, he possesses all power. And that's your future, to be in his family, to be under his care. So we want to place ourselves under his care. So with the remainder of our time, I'm going to talk about Jesus' program for prayer. I want to highlight a few things, then we'll get into what is called the Lord's Prayer. And some people say it should be the disciples' prayer. I don't care. Either way, call it whatever you want. It's the one that it's the paradigm template that Jesus gave us, okay, to pray through. When you pray, this is how you should do it. First, he makes a distinction. He says, you don't need to pray long, lengthy prayers. Like, God can't hear you, right? If I pray 10 times, oh God, will you please help me with this thing? God, help me pay my mortgage. Help me pay my mortgage. Help me. It worked when we were kids with our parents, right? And so we think maybe we should pray to God that way. Jesus is making a clarification. You don't need to do that, right? Later on, he says, God already knows what you need before you ask, and he already wants to give you good things. The heart of God is to give you good things. He already knows what you need, so you don't have to continually repeat yourself in your prayers, because the way you pray is not the significant thing about prayer. Your relationship with God as family, that's the significant thing, right? If I were to ask Quentin for $10, he'd be like, let me think about that. What do you need it for? What is this? If I ask my dad for $10, we have a relationship. He's like, all right, here you go. He probably would not even have to ask me what I need it for. He's just like, he knows that if I'm asking, then it's for a good reason. There's a relationship there. Now, Quentin's very generous, so he'd probably give me $10. Thank you, Quentin. Appreciate it. So kind of you. The same is true with our relationship with God, right? You have his ear directed toward your voice. His eyes are turned toward you, and he's listening. What do you have to say? What do you want to ask me for? Right? He's locked in on you. I'm listening. I'm listening. You don't have to wave your hands to get his attention. Hey, up there, I'm right here. Hey. I love the story of Elijah with the prophets of Baal. I don't think you can actually read this without thinking about that story. I think that all of Jesus' audience were immediately thinking about this story. So Elijah notices all of Israel's turned to worship Baal. Baal is a foreign god, an idol, and everyone's worshiping him. And Elijah says, all right, we're going to meet on this mountain. I've seen that mountain. I didn't get to go up it, but I saw it from a distance. And we're going to have a showdown, Baal versus Yahweh, and we'll see who wins. And so Elijah, he gets there. There's 400 prophets of Baal, right? 400. And he says, we're both going to make two altars of wood. We're going to put the animal on the top, and we are not going to light anything. Okay? We're going to stand back. We're going to pray, and the altar that is consumed with fire will show which God is the one true God, the living God. So Elijah says, you guys go first. You guys go first. And man, they make this fire. They start praying. Baal, hear us, hear us, hear us, hear us. Light the fire, light the fire, light the fire, light the... They have their song, they have their dance, they're doing their prayer mantras, their meditations, there's whatever they're doing, all right? They are doing everything they can, and Elijah's sitting back. This is like one of the best stories in the whole Bible. Elijah's just like, I don't think he can hear you. You gotta pray louder. He's like, I think Baal took a vacation. You gotta call him back from vacation. He's gone. They pray. They start cutting themselves so they can scream louder, like, hear us, you know. And by the way, cutting is demonic in the Bible. Every time you see self-harm, like cutting, it comes from demons. If you have a practice of cutting, don't feel shame, but know that the enemy is attacking your life. He's attacking your mind and your heart. It's demonic, and I'd love to pray for you. We'd keep it 100% confidential. All right? It is demonic, though, and Jesus has the power to break the voices of demons and the lies of the enemy. So, and I've seen that. I had a little boy, he was 12 years old in my youth group, and he burned into his arm, murderer and liar. I'm like, now why would I get liar? That makes sense, okay? We all lie. Murderer? Like, what? And these are identity statements, right? I am a murderer. I am a liar. This is who I am. This is the kind of language demons use to keep us bound. I am this kind of person and I can't change. So the prophets of Baal are cutting themselves. They're screaming, and Elijah just continues to poke fun. He's like, oh, he must be on the potty. He's constipated. He can't get off the potty. You know, like, call louder. You know, maybe he can come when he's done, but, you know, and then they go all day. It's just this big ordeal, and nothing happens to the fire. Then Elijah's like, all right, here's the deal. It's my turn. Baal took a vacation. Actually, he's nothing. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to have you dig a trench around my altar. You guys dig a trench around my altar. You guys, I want you to take these jars, fill them with water. You go fill them with water. Now, dump all those jugs of water onto the altar. Do it again. Do it again. It was soaking. The whole trench around the altar was filled with water. They did it. And Elijah's like, Lord, demonstrate to your people who you are. Fire comes, instantly consumes all the wood, the animal, and all the water. Now, the R-rated version of the story is then Elijah kills all 400 prophets so that they could not lie to Israel anymore, right? For you in your life, there are things that you need to kill, not people, things. There are practices, TV shows, there are things that are leading you away from God. Do what Elijah did, put those things to death. Don't pick them up again. Like, do what you can to be rid of those things, the places, the areas of temptation. So, God knows what you need. You don't need to keep babbling on like the pagans again and again and again. Now, there is a difference, though, because Jesus, it says multiple times, Jesus prayed all night long, right? Jesus prayed for hours. He prayed all night long. Jesus fasted and prayed for 40 days of prayer, continuous prayer. What do you do during those times? And Jesus also taught us in Luke chapter 18 to always pray and to never give up. So you can bring the same request to God every day, right? Pray daily for the same thing. Bring it back before God, not because he doesn't hear you, but because Jesus instructed you to do it that way, right? And you're tenacious about it. And you can read Luke 18, 1 through 8. It's a wonderful passage. But there is times when you pray long prayers. But most of the time, we can also pray short prayers. And we can expect that our God hears us. And that's what we should. We should always expect our God is immediately hearing us and he cares. So, and that's the heart of what Jesus is getting at. So then, how do you pray? This then is how you should pray. This is what you should pray. Our Father, who is in the heavens. Right? It's plural there. Almost every English Bible will say heaven. I think that that's a bad translation. The idea of the divine plural is a medieval era idea. It does not date pre-Jesus, which is when this kind of language was used. That's a very complicated, get into the original language discussion, but in the heavens. And this is important, I'll tell you why. Because in Jewish thought, there were 3 levels of heaven. The air around us that we breathe in, the sky, and then above the sky, outer space. Right? We basically have the same concepts of the heavens today, right? Air, then we have the sky up until the ozone layer, and then we have space beyond that. So, and then we know that where God is seated in his throne room is somewhere else. Maybe a parallel reality, the metaverse might be helpful to think here. The spiritual realm is overlaid on our realm, but we can't directly access it, right? But they can directly access us. C.S. Lewis had some very interesting thoughts about this in his sci-fi series about why angels have a greater ability to impact the physical and than we do the spiritual per se. All right, so. And to be seen and see into both. So, your Father is as close to you as the air that you breathe. Let's just think about that. He's not far from you. He's never far from you. He's as close to you as the air that you are breathing. And what happens to the air when we breathe it in? It comes and it fills the whole body and gives life and energy to it. In the same way, my Father who is in the heavens, he's empowering my every breath, right? Just take a deep breath. God is as close to you as that breath. Our Father who is in the heavens, not only is he that close and intimate with us and our needs, he also reigns seated in the heavens over all of creation, right? He is completely sovereign, and his will win in the end, right? There are forces of evil and darkness that are actively trying to destroy God's purposes for your life. Us too. We are trying to destroy God's purpose for our life and God's purpose for someone else's life. When we say hurtful things to people, When we have a bad attitude with people, like we are actively trying to destroy God's plan for their life. It might be subconscious. We might not have intended it, but what is it doing? It's subverting God's plan for that person's life. So we watch what our mouth says. We watch our attitude, Body language and your facial expressions say a whole lot. It's so good to see you today. I'm so glad you're home from work. Like your emotions are showing, right? But they can show the opposite way too. Oh, I'm so glad to see you today. Man, I got back from teen Bible quiz yesterday. I was tired, had a headache, and I got home. I was like, I'm so glad to be home. I come in the door, I'm so glad to be home. And my boys had Nerf guns. They're like, bow, bow, bow. I'm just getting blasted as soon as I get in the door. And Evie's like, like get out of the line of fire, Like immediate war zone. But, like how I come home is important to me. It's intentional. I don't want to walk into my house to see my family and them see a tired, worn out, beat up dad. I want them to see Jesus in my life. Right? So, like I'm walking up to my door with intention. I'm not going to walk in tired or showing my headache. I'm going to walk in to show my joy to be with my family. I'm going to pour it on thick, give the devil a kick, go home and tell my mother. Sorry, that's a youth song that we used to sing. Okay. Our Father who is in the heavens, right? He's that close. He's empowering us every single day. He's reigning over our life. Hallowed be your name. Some translations will say, may your name be kept holy. It means be held in high regard. That people would be in awe and wonder at the name of Yahweh or Yeshua, right? So when I'm praying, Lord, hallowed be your name, I am saying I want my life to be lived in such a way that when people meet me, when people have relationship with me, that they hold your name in high regard. I have a friend who doesn't serve God. He grew up in the church and he walked away. And to be perfectly honest, he doesn't really like Christians that much. But he loves me. It's like, man, but your faith is different, right? You've got something. I don't think I can have what you have and have it the same way. I don't think I'd want it if I could. I don't understand it, but he respects the God that I serve. He can't deny the power of God through my life, and he can't deny the power of God in my life, the kind of person that I am. So my prayer is, God, may I live my life in such a way that people would hold your name in high regard. Like people who have Jesus as a life coach are amazing. Like, it's the best program in town. Like you got to sign yourself up. This Jesus guy, he knows what he's doing. Like, have you met so-and-so? He is getting personal coaching from Jesus. And look at how successful he is. Look at how happy his marriage is. Look at how wonderful his life is, right? This is the kind of thing that people should be saying because they see your life. Hallowed be your name. And of course, that also means that I would hold his name in high regard too, right? Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So, like when you're thinking about this and you're praying, you don't pray through this passage fast, although I do pray through it fast with my boys almost every night. Our Father in heaven, our Father who is in the heaven, no, our Father, sorry, I have like 4 translations. I'm just going to read it. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but rescue us from the evil one. So here, like if you pray it fast, it doesn't take its proper effect to clean the inside. You got to pray it really slow, phrase by phrase. Our Father. And just spend time thinking about God as a father. Right? Our Father. My God is my Father to me. And then I had a good relationship with my father. Maybe you had a bad relationship with your father. But then you take time to think about how God is the perfect Father. So for me, I look at how good my father was, and God is even better still. For you, you might say, this is the father I never had. This is the father that I wish my father had been like, but you are to me. And we lean into it. Would you be that for me? Maybe you don't experience God as your father. He doesn't feel like a father to me, right? He doesn't feel like a father to me. And then you're saying, our Father, would you father me? God, would you father me? Would I experience you as a father in my life? Right? Who is in the heavens. You're as close to me as my breath. You reign over all of heaven and earth. Your will is sovereign. You will win at the end of the day despite me, despite all the evil that is going around in creation. Why do evil things happen? Look in the mirror. It's your fault. Right? Am I allowed to say that? I'm sorry, that wasn't very happy. People come, they tell me, why is there so much evil? How could God, who is powerful and good, allow evil to happen to good people? Look in the mirror. You get to make decisions to bless people or to harm people. And God honors your ability to make that choice. And he will judge you based on the choices that you've made. And your decisions will condemn you to hell forever or get you into heaven forever, into his place. Because God knows the trajectory of your life, whether you're going to spiral and always be getting worse in life, which should scare the hell out of you. Like, seriously, right? Is my life constantly getting worse? Is my depression getting worse? Is my anger getting worse? Is my fear getting worse? Is my morality getting worse? Am I spiraling downward or am I trotting upward? And those things, depression, when it grabs me, doesn't grab me like it used to. Anger, when it grabs me, doesn't grab me like it used to. Bitterness, I can let go of bitterness. But bitterness is always at the door. It's creeping. Right? It's there, just trying to whittle its way in to make you rigid and cold and untrusting of everybody. Oh, but people, no, they're all nice when you get to know them. But at the end of the day, they're all conniving. Nobody cares. Nobody loves. They'll backstab you eventually when you're not convenient for them anymore. This voice of bitterness whispers constantly. It's trying to grab your heart to keep you under control. But if we start with my Father who is in the heavens, you're with me. My source of life, my identity comes from being a son in his household. My inheritance rights comes from him. My family name comes from him. My true family name comes from him. My Father. You watch over my life. You're providing for my life. You are guiding my life in the direction it should go. Everything an ideal father is supposed to be, you are to me, Lord. Or if you're less further along in the process, would you be that to me? I believe that you want to be that for me. Would you be that for me? You start there, and then you begin to develop experiences with the Lord. And then you're like, you are this. And it's just worship and praise. This is why, like, when worship starts, it's not really, I don't have to wait 2 songs to get into the worship time, right? Because my heart is developed into a gratitude for the Lord. Your kingdom come, your will be done is how God's name is made holy, how God's name is held in high regard by his will being done.